Welcome back to DreamHack Winter 2018. We have our first semifinalist, and it is Boston, who was able to defeat Toast Monster in our first quarterfinal. But now we are going to find out who he will be playing against in the semifinals. It's going to be the winner of Arakoj versus Pardub, two players from the Czech Republic who actually faced off against each other yesterday on stream. Joining me for this cast will be Derek Brown. Welcome back to the desk, Derek. This one, I believe you actually casted yesterday, correct?
Yes, I did have the pleasure of casting that game. It was a bit of an interesting one with some ups and downs, I think we could say, from both the players.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it. Both of these players from the Czech Republic have some experience with competitive Hearthstone, but not a whole lot. Arakoj, I believe, actually went 0-5 at DreamHack Winter last year, so could not manage to get a win, but has come leaps and bounds of progress since then, and was actually able to qualify for the top 16. Of course, won his top 16 match, and now he's playing against Pardub in the top 8. He did, however, lose that encounter, I believe, when they played against each other yesterday. Pardub was able to reverse sweep with Questrogue, I want to say.
Yes, he was. It was a very weird series where the Questrogue didn't look particularly well positioned against Arakoj's lineup, because Arakoj has got a somewhat untraditionally, for this tournament at least, aggressive lineup. He's got the even Paladin. He's got the only Zoo that I've seen, I think, from any competitor in this tournament. Pretty much everyone is going for the even Warlock, just for its much more even spread of matchups rather than the more polarized matchups that Zoo has. But I think it got banned in the previous series when these two went up against each other. So maybe that's part of Pardub's thinking. Get rid of the aggro decks and let his Questrogue do the sweeping.
Well, it certainly did a lot of work in their last matchup. Let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket and see what else we have on the table for today. Of course, we are in our second quarterfinal. Boston defeated Toast Monster 3-1, and he will be playing against the winner of this series, Arakoj or Pardub. Then on the other side of the bracket, we have Dawido taking on Faeli later on today, and then Tyler versus Burrow. And that will be our second semifinal match. And ultimately, we'll see who goes to the finals and who is crowned the DreamHack Winter 2018 Hearthstone Grand Prix champion. A lot of good names still left in the bracket. This is the one matchup where there is not a well-known player between the two, I would say.
I would definitely agree with you there. Both of these players are pretty much unknown to the vast majority of us. Lorinda, of course, had heard of Pardub, as he is wont to do with some of the less well-known players knocking about on the competitive Hearthstone circuit. But Arakoj is pretty much a complete unknown to us before we saw him playing yesterday. And he does have what I would call not only off the meta lineup, I would call it. I would say it's not quite as strong in terms of the overall power level. It might just be comfort decks. Maybe he's very, very strong with the more aggressive styles with Zoo and the even Paladin, or at least mid-range, we could call it. But I think it's maybe not quite so well positioned against the field. Whereas against Pardub, there are some decks that he could fairly heavily target, with the Questrogue in particular. All
right, well, give me a rundown on exactly the lineups that these two players have brought. We touched on the Rogue, we touched on the Zoo Warlock. What do they have other than that? They
have, looking at my notes, the even Paladin for Arakoj, Token Druid, Hunter, and Zoo. Whereas for Pardub, he has got the even Paladin as well. And he's got Mali Druid, Xerix Cloning Gallery Priest, and Questrogue. He is one of the very, very few players that we've seen not to bring Death Rattle Hunter.
That is really unusual, because Death Rattle Hunter has been a standout, I would say, in this tournament and the last several that we've had. It just performs so incredibly well across a field that doesn't have a whole lot of full aggro lineups, and that is definitely what we're seeing here over the course of this weekend. It's been far more hybrid lineups or full control than it is full aggro. But let's go ahead and take a look at the bans, see if that changes up the stats here whatsoever, maybe gives any of these players a bit of a favor in the matchup. Arakoj's Warlock has been banned, Pardub's Paladin has been banned.
Yes, I believe that is the same bans as when they faced off yesterday, which doesn't always happen. You would expect it when two players with when they face each other twice in the same tournament would always ban the same. But mind games could often enter into it. You're starting to think, okay, well, now that we've done it before, they are expecting me to ban this because I did it last time. So let's throw them off a bit. Maybe I can use the mind games to get an advantage here. But for both of these players, just going with what they calculated last time as the mathematically best deck in terms of lineups.
Yeah, you would think that players would tend to stay consistent with their bans when they're playing rematches against the same opponents, but I would think it actually tends to change ban more often than not, because you learn from the experience that you had. You saw how those matchups went, and then sometimes you do end up changing your mind and deciding to ban a different deck. But here it is going to just be the same bans, and Arakoj got very far ahead in the series last time around. It looked like he was going to be able to snap it up, but then Pardub was able to get that reverse sweep with the Quest Rogue. So will that happen yet again, or will it be different results? Who do you think will be winning this series? Is it hashtag Arakoj or hashtag Pardub? Make sure you're following in the channel. Get your votes into the chat. Derek, do you have a preference here?
I think when it's two players who I am very much not familiar with, I haven't seen them play all too much competitive Hearthstone, I like to go on lineups more than the play styles that I've seen too far, because both players, I liked some of their plays last time, I disagreed with some of them, and I think it should be going Arakoj's way the majority of the time. The Quest Rogue doesn't feel particularly well situated from Pardub. I just don't really like Quest Rogue very much at the moment as a deck against the majority of the field that has been brought here. And even though it managed to reverse sweep last time, I think that was a little bit of an anomaly, and I'm going with Arakoj on this one.
I will agree with you here, actually. I think Pardub made a couple mistakes last time around that opened him up to potentially losing a series that he, of course, ended up winning, but there were just some small things with Quest Rogue, like being sure to hold on to your Vicious Scalehide and your Zola, and pretty much ensuring that wins you the game, and he just sort of threw things onto the board a bit haphazardly. It seemed like he didn't quite understand exactly what he had to do in some of those matchups. So I'm going to say that Arakoj's lineup is more consistent, and I'm thinking that the Quest Rogue isn't going to perform as well this time as it did yesterday. Now, there are a lot of Quest Rogue diehards still out there who will disagree with us, but you know what? We are going to find out. And who did you at home vote for? Let's find out who has the fan vote, at the very least. It is Pardub with 59%, but quite close. Arakoj, 41%. And, you know, any number of factors can influence the audience vote, but at the end of the day, it is very close.
It is very close. I imagine Pardub's pretty cool, slick hairstyle is having something to do with it.
It's quite slick, I will say. Hard to get that bleached blonde like that. But we are going to be getting this match underway very shortly. A lot of last hero standing comes down to what is this first pick here, and then who has the ability to effectively counterpick the opponent. It is going to be Quest Rogue for Arakoj, Pardub. Those names are flipped. Excuse us on that. I believe Arakoj is on the bottom, Pardub is on the top.
Yes.
So Arakoj on the Even Paladin, Pardub on the Quest Rogue. We're going to get that switched up right away for you.
And this is a very interesting first pick from Pardub, who is playing the Quest Rogue in his lineup, because Quest Rogue is I would say in last hero standing, primarily a counter pick rather than a sweeper deck. You play it if Arakoj gets a win with his Death Rattle Hunter, you snap pick the Quest Rogue because it's got a pretty decent matchup, I would say, against the Death Rattle Hunter. Whereas Pardub here is just saying with the Quest Rogue, I'm just going to get it out right at the start. Maybe he thinks it's in such a bad spot that he's using it to scout out information about what Pardub is going for first. Maybe he ends up winning anyway, but if not, he can get the counter Q against the Even Paladin.
That is definitely a possibility, but it is rather inconsistent with his performance yesterday when he ended up sweeping with the Quest Rogue. So I would think that he would feel maybe a bolstered sense of confidence in the Quest Rogue, and he would want to save that until later, maybe to, you know, allow for history to repeat itself and allow for him to get another sweep with it. But no, he's just going to lead it off, and Quest Rogue versus Even Paladin is interesting. It's not as straightforward as Quest Rogue versus Odd Paladin, I would say, where Odd Paladin is the straight-up aggressor, and the Quest Rogue really needs to rely on Fan of Knives and Vanish to simply not die.
Yep.
Even Paladin's going to be a little bit slower, with the exception of Corpse Taker into something like Blessing of Kings.
Yeah, which is why we see there from Arakoj making the play already of going for just sacrificing off the Lab Recruit. So I really like this play of just throwing it down on turn 2, using it to kill off an Armani Berserker. That's why this card is acceptable to use in Quest Rogue, because against any mildly aggressive deck, it's just a 2-mana 3/2. You curve out and you survive.
And Pardub, of course, with the second deckhand and the Elven Minstrel, can draw into a couple more cards next turn. Very likely will want to be completing his quest with something that draws cards at this point, because his hand is quite bad, or with a Glacial Shard, I would think, to sort of slow down the game a little bit, get rid of some of that aggression.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about, in an ideal world, what would he actually complete the quest with? Because Sonya being drawn off the Elven Minstrel would obviously be a pretty good way to go about it when you have the deckhand knocking about in hand as well. But it's a good point you bring up with Glacial Shards. When you already have card draw in the form of Elven Minstrel, the supreme stall that Glacial Shard affords you could actually just be really good here.
Well, it looks like Pardub is actually going to invest a little bit more into deckhand and try to complete the quest that way if he can. That does mean that he's going to be taking some damage early on, but as we can see, that Corpse Taker does not have Wind Fury. The Harpy is in hand, and there is no Blessing of Kings to follow up. So Pardub going to be a lot safer here than he could have been.
Pardub with a bit of a tough choice here. After having Shadow Stepped the deckhand already, he obviously wants to keep the deckhand alive, Shadow Step it back once again. But if he does go for that, he doesn't have any more card draw because he's not Shadow Stepping the Elven Minstrel. So I think I like the concession here from Pardub saying, okay, I've used a Shadow Step on a deckhand already, but I'm not going to go for the sunk cost fallacy where I have to go all in on the deckhand, even though it's not the better play. I like the card draw he's prioritizing here instead.
I agree. Were he to all in on the deckhand, he would have to rely very heavily on picking up Sonya Shadow Dancer in particular in the next couple of turns, or Brewmaster into Vanish, something just to help him complete that quest because he doesn't have the ability to do it in hand right now. Obviously, in hindsight, maybe he should have gone deckhand Elven Minstrel and not used that first Shadow Step to bring back the deckhand, but he's still going to have plenty of bouncers in the deck to get the quest completed.
That's a good point, actually. I hadn't... Because he just floated a mana on that turn, didn't he? And
yeah, he just
Shadow Stepped it on the last turn.
Step.
Yeah, that's a good point. What was he looking for 1 mana exactly that he could play on turn 5 with that play? There's not much, is there?
I'm not sure, which was why I was, honestly, it didn't occur to me that he would want to bounce the deckhand. Just because there's a Corpse Taker in the way, you don't have the bounce effects right now.
That's a really
Somehow
good
you're
spot.
going to have to get minions through the Elven Minstrel.
And I think there are a lot of draws he could have got off of Minstrel that would have rewarded his play a little bit more heavily. Like, obviously, Sonya, he's in a fantastic spot then if he had drawn Sonya off of the Minstrel. He wouldn't have had to Shadow Step it back. If he'd drawn any card draw card like the other Minstrel and the other Novice Engineer, maybe he would have just continued Shadow Stepping the deckhand because he has enough card draw then already. But he would have had to have had in mind that this is a punish for his play, and he's now basically just a Shadow Step down.
At the very least, he could have gone deckhand Minstrel and then evaluate. And if he wanted to, then he could have Shadow Stepped the deckhand.
That's also true.
But Arakoj building up quite a threatening board here. We do see Pardub has managed to find a Vanish and a Preparation as well. However, at this point, depends on if he wants to Vanish and develop at the same time, or whether he wants to hold on to that Preparation for when the Crystal Core finally comes.
Yeah.
Gonna be a little ways off, though. Can start to do some stuff with Sonya and the boar.
But he wishes he had a Shadow Step, though, that he could Shadow Step that Sonya back to his hand, because Sonya's
nice?
Step is just one of the best combos that Questroga's had for a very long time to get that 1 mana Sonya, and with a prep in hand as well, he would be looking down the easiest quest completion next turn of his life.
And Arakoj knows that there's a chance that Sonya's in hand right now. He's seen 2 Elven Minstrels come down. But he cannot win the game without playing minions. So at some point, he's going to have to concede to the fact that if Pardub has Sonya and a charge minion, the quest is going to be done.
It's always something to consider that you can try and not play minions, like, for example, just equip Valadier and smack face on this turn. But I think because he doesn't know that the Sonya is there, and he's going to have to play minions to win the game, he has to take the risk, but his face there says it all. This is the absolute last thing he wanted to see.
Yeah, he is not a happy camper. And Pardub leans into this emotive personality he's built for himself in the last couple of days. He is consistent, if nothing else. I mean, they're both from the Czech Republic. Fayeli, also Czech Republic. And they did take a picture together yesterday, so I'm assuming these two guys know each other. I'm assuming they're friends and it's all in good fun.
Yeah.
But that is the Crystal Core completed, ready to be prepped out next turn. Or Pardub can go with Valeera next turn, prep out the Crystal Core the turn after that, and then just start charging boars to face.
It's not a bad thought there. I think because he doesn't have a Vanish in hand, Valeera might be a little bit too low tempo when he already has huge amounts of value with the double Novice Engineer and a Sonya that, from where he's standing, could very well survive the turn, and obviously until the Valanir comes down.
Yeah, you're right. He's got enough stuff that he probably just wants to keep this going if he possibly can. He's going to win the board from here on out. There's no way that Arakoj can fight back on the board, but he does have 2 copies of Equality and Consecration and Wild Pyromancer in the deck.
Yeah, this is how he tries to win the game now. It's hoping that Pardub's hand, by some miracle, is not very good, and he can get there through burst, because it's not a ridiculous assumption to make. If he can kill off this Glacial Shard, Pardub has shown with his playstyle as Quest Rogue, he is not conservative with his resources in the slightest. He plays very, very aggressively to just get his cards on the board. So maybe Arakoj can exhaust him of Scale Hides, exhaust him of Glacial Shards, and push damage to face to try and win with Avenging Wrath and Valanir.
Yeah, in his match against Arakoj yesterday, Pardub seemed rather unconcerned with holding onto cards like Vicious Scalehide and ensuring that he can bounce them later on, or ensuring that he gets multiple activations of a Glacial Shard Battlecry. He just wants the most bodies on the board that he can have at any point in time. In this matchup, I don't think that's the way you want to go, because eventually Arakoj will have a full board clear, and Pardub may get punished if he continues to operate under that mentality.
Yeah, I think you've got to be just slow and steady with this matchup. Know the break points in terms of damage. Like, if you're above the 8 damage that Avenging Wrath can do, or the 12 damage that Avenging Wrath plus True Silver can do, then you don't need to just play out your cards willy-nilly. You need to save them for Valeera and get a lot of value from them.
But one thing that the Quest Rogue deck does excel at now, even after Giggling Inventor is gone, is value. And that's with the addition of Lab Recruiters. You can put all of those very valuable effects back in your deck, keep cycling through, find additional copies of like Glacial Shard and Vicious Scalehide.
Lab Recruiter is gone though. Only one in the deck, and it was played on turn 2 here.
Oh, he's only playing the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was correct to play on turn 2 just to make sure he didn't get overrun by Armani Berserkers. But it's a good point you bring up. He does have to be a little bit afraid now of just dying to running out of stuff.
With the Valeera, I don't think that's as likely, but yeah, he does not have the ability to, for instance, Lab Recruiter, his own Lab Recruiter with the use of the Death Shadow.
But I would argue as well that yesterday, going for those ultimate combo win conditions was a style of play I didn't like from Pardub. I think he was too focused on going for stuff like Lab Recruiter, going infinite in fatigue, whereas he should have been more focused on just not dying.
Well, this is going to be a clear turn from Arakoj. He's still going to have an Equality in hand and a Wild Pyromancer, actually. Issues, though, because that does not leave him with his own board. Consecration would be a little bit more expensive, but perhaps would allow him to push a little bit more damage. And again, Wind Fury Harpy was drawn and played, so no Wind Fury on the Corpse Taker.
Pardub's done a lovely job, though, I would say, of prioritizing Glacial Shards as much as possible. He knows that that is really important to stop that damage coming through to face, because while he may be able to control the board, now that Giggling's gone, the amount of taunts is significantly lower. So that Valanir could just be connecting face turn after turn after turn if he's not careful. He is, however, not slowing down with the card draw one iota.
Even going so far as to prep Fan with a Vanish in hand.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what we were talking about. He's just putting his stuff all out on the board. Again, he does have the Vanish to bring it all back, but if there was, say, another clear here from Arakoj, Pardub's left himself in a position where if he were to draw into some not-so-good stuff, he could have a lack of resources in the next couple turns.
And he just played prep on a turn where he floated 5 mana.
Yes.
Obviously, he was drawing a card, so maybe there was something that would have influenced his decision. There's no Giggling Inventor for the obvious 5 mana play anymore. Maybe he was thinking he could go prep Fan and end up playing Valeera on that turn as well.
If that's the case, I think you probably just Valeera and hold.
Yeah.
And then reevaluate.
I agree. Maybe seems to me like he should have slowed down a tad there, but there she is, finally coming down at the Valeera to get the value rolling. How many cards he has left, though, we obviously can't see, but it feels to me like it's not actually going to be that many. He's drawn quite a lot.
And actually having to float the Death Shadow this turn. Not able to get an additional copy of the boar on the board. And there's a Tarim pickup for Arakoj.
And here for Arakoj, he needs to very heavily consider going Pyro Equality. Oh, no, wait. Oh, sorry. Of course, he can't attack face. I was going to say you could try setting up for Avenging Wrath lethal.
Oh, yes.
But the stealth on this turn... because
Does he have 2 in the deck, I'm assuming?
One in the deck.
Oh, only the one. And a commander. Okay.
Oh, no, that's Pardub's list. Arakoj has less burst, I think, available to him with only the one Avenging Wrath.
Right, he's running the Tyrion.
Yeah. If the stealth wasn't there, I would have liked maybe just not playing any minions and going for the slim but very high reward play of just going for Avenging Wrath lethal. Because obviously if you don't play minions, Ziliax and the Vicious Scalehide can't heal up on that turn.
We do see Pardub has both in hand, so he was not going to be within range of death anytime soon. But still very realistically within range of running out of stuff. And with the Corpse Taker having been vanished, that does, I believe, take away that Valinir.
Yeah, Valinir is donezo.
But that's fine. The Ashbringer's frozen this turn anyway, and Arakoj would much rather have 2 turns of 5 damage instead of 2 turns of 4.
So Arakoj here, with his opponent at exactly 13 health, 13 minus 5, last time I checked, does equal 8. And he's coming to the exact same conclusion I am now. Avenging Wrath off the top, if there's no Ziliax, would give him the game.
Oh.
He doesn't think it's worth the risk.
It would give him the game potentially. Pardub can still, even without lifesteal, put minions in the way of an Avenging Wrath.
Good point, good point. If he had another Equality, then he could go Pyromancer Equality first. But
yeah, played both those already.
Yeah, I guess this was probably a bit better on balance, even though we can clearly see, yeah, it hasn't worked out. But against double Ziliax, nothing would have worked out, I don't think.
But again, this seems to me like Pardub is falling into similar traps time and again, where he's playing this deck quite consistently for him, but I don't know that it's the optimal way to play this deck.
Yeah, I get the suspicion that while he pretty much had to play double Ziliax there, current moment Pardub is suffering for what 5 minutes ago Pardub was doing, where, you know, he has to play like this now, where he just throws out the minions. But the fact that Pardub was drawing cards so aggressively, played Valeera so late, wasn't making high-value plays, just threw away a Shadow Step, threw away a prep. This is, again, just playing his cards in a way that I don't think is optimal.
He has to play that way now. He didn't have to play that way 5 minutes ago.
Yes, yeah.
He's only got 2 cards left in his deck, actually, so this Minstrel draws him both of his final minions. He does still have Zola, and the Zola has the ability to copy Zola minion with Death Shadow every turn and go infinite onto the board. But obviously, having played that Lab Recruiter early, he is now permanently in Fatigue.
Yeah, and Fatigue, when you're going Scalehide Zola, Fatigue really starts to become not a consideration for a very long time. You can go into 7, 8, 9 Fatigue a turn quite easily, I find. Especially when you're playing against a deck that has used up all of its removal effectively to clear off the ones that you are creating each turn.
Yeah, barring Avenging Wraths here, Arakoj just doesn't have a way to deal with the board anymore. And it looked like he was quite close. But I do want to say again, I don't think it should have been this close. Arakoj still not going to give it up.
And again, I don't want to keep ragging on Pardub because I feel like the core idea of his strategy was very spot on. Stuff like just playing the Lab Recruiter at the start. Even though he's feeling the punishment for that now, I think that was right. Or you just die in the mid-game before you even get to this point. Going for Shadow Stepping the Minstrel, I think was right. I think it was good to keep the card draw rolling at the start when his hand was looking a little dry. It's just the technique, the technical play that goes along with that overall strategy that I think maybe could have used a little bit of fine-tuning.
Move quickly. The battle.
But ultimately, it is looking like Pardub will be able to wrap this one up. And of course, as is the nature of Last Hero Standing, he will have his Quest Rogue yet again in the next game. Arakoj left with Hunter and Druid to attempt to counter Quest Rogue. Neither of those are particularly good.
Yeah. Is this over? Can Pardub clear up enough stuff each turn? Like, Arakoi's not dead. If he can get a Spike Ridge Steed, that's like a big minion to put in the way.
I think he's got one left.
Yeah, I think he's got one left as well. Tyrion's obviously been played, but the Lich King into, I don't know, Army of the Dead or Anti-Magic Shell maybe gives too much aggression for the Quest Rogue to fight back against in one turn. It looks unlikely, I'll admit, at this point, as I suppose that was a pretty disgusting turn there for the Quest Rogue.
It's quite good.
Pretty good. Yeah, maybe this is just over. He can survive the turn at 1 health, I believe, after gaining the 2 health from True Silver. Yeah.
But that is done and dusted. Pardub taking game number 1, and queuing that Quest Rogue first we thought was a bit unusual, but looking at Arakoi's lineup overall, it's just not super well equipped to deal with Quest Rogue in any way.
Yeah.
We obviously saw that in their first matchup yesterday when Pardub was able to get that reverse sweep with the Rogue.
Yeah, I don't know. For Arakoj, the way it worked out in the other 2 games, like his Death Rattle Hunter just got met with the perfect hand from Pardub. He had the Prep Vanish, he just dismantled the Death Rattle Hunter. It had every card you want to deal with the Death Rattle Hunter. But against the Token Druid, I feel like that was a much more interesting game where Arakoj, his play was very reckless. He just went coin into coin into Whispering Woods on turn 3 and was met with an instant Fan of Knives, which basically ended the game on the spot right there, I think. Whereas he could have gone coin Violet Teacher and then maybe start to get the ball rolling with those mid-sized minions. It's difficult for Quest Rogue to deal with a 3/5 on turn 3 for them. On turn 4, sorry. So I think maybe if we saw Arakoj going home, talking to some of his practice partners about how to fight that matchup, could be in a significantly better spot if it goes through once again.
I would expect to see that Druid queued up next, as it is a much better matchup than the Hunter. And I think you're right. If Arakoj plays this a little bit differently, this should be a smoother road than it was yesterday. Already leading off with that Wild Growth is a very nice start. Pardub, anytime you are on the coin as the Quest Rogue and you have an Elven Minstrel, you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah. You like that, well, you like that a lot against most Druids. Token Druid, you have to be a little more responsive, I find. You can't just do your own thing, kind of quote-unquote play solitaire is the meme, for a few turns. You have to have responses or you're just going to die very quickly. As we see him once again from Pardub, throwing down the Lab Recruiter. He realizes this matchup, he's got to be a little bit quicker. He can't just be playing out his minions slowly over the next few turns. He's got to get the ball rolling.
And this does help him to kill off the Violet Teacher if he so chooses. He'll have to give up the Stone Tusk Boar as well. But like you were saying before, it can be very difficult for Quest Rogue to deal with that Violet Teacher on turn 4. So this is well worth it for Pardub.
And imagine if Pardub had just gone for Dagger there. That is what I think the vast majority of Quest Rogue players do on turn 2 every time, is they just Dagger up on turn 2, because usually that's the right play. You want to save your minions a lot of the time for their valuable Battle Cry or Death Rattle effect. But killing off that Violet Teacher there means Arakoj can't just lead into a swipe and then just a Spreading Plague, maybe just for 1 minion. Savage Roar would probably have just closed out the game then.
Arakoj's hand, however, looking really awkward now, deciding whether he wants to go for the Arcane Tyrant this turn for the full 5 mana or save it to be used alongside the Spreading Plague. The issue there being he doesn't know that he's going to want to necessarily Spreading Plague next turn, and then he could miss out on some damage if he doesn't drop the Arcane Tyrant right now.
Yeah, I think I like just throwing down the Tyrant on this turn. You can get hitting your opponent. You again, you know, you want to be aggressive. This, at the moment, is a hand that doesn't say OTK right now. It says curve out, stay ahead on the board as much as possible, get some damage through to face with Malfurion as well as this this Arcane Tyrant.
Pardub does still have a little bit of cycle in hand, maybe not all of the bounce effects that he needs at this point, but he's getting there.
I think I like using the Glacial Shard on this turn because it's not like against Malagos Druid where you have to freeze the twig as much as possible to stop them from OTKing you. And it's not like there's many big minions that you want to freeze over the course of this game. Whereas at a later date, double Wax Elemental on a single turn could be the swing turn he needs to protect himself against a big Whispering Woods. So I like the keep of Wax Elemental, but I don't think I would have hated the use of Glacial Shard there.
If Pardub were to shard the Arcane Tyrant this turn, Arakoj could have felt the need to hero power down the shard to prevent bounce effects. And if that was the case, and Arakoj had to decide between a hero power and... I guess there's really not much else he would rather do for 5 mana.
I was just coming to the same conclusion, because if he's nourishing,
he's going to be able to hero power anyway.
Exactly, and he would have done it last turn anyway. So, yeah, I mean, it would have stopped maybe... Actually, no, probably wouldn't have even stopped Arakoj from going for this Spreading Plague. So for Pardub, I guess given that it's not going into turn 7 where he wants to play Malfurion, you're not really denying enough from your opponent.
I hope you like my invention.
So at this point, Pardub ideally is looking for Sonya, and a deckhand would make completion quite easy. But looking to the later stages of the game, now it's going into turn 8, where Arakoj, if he had Woods and Soul of the Forest, would be able to use it.
Yeah.
Also, his board right now is kind of scary for Pardub. This is a very Soul of the Forestable board by itself, maybe with a branching paths as well, just for some immediate damage. So there we go. He's going to be looking for that Vanish.
And looking back now from Arakoj, a couple of turns ago when he traded into the Elven Minstrel, we were talking about the Glacial Shard at the time, but I wonder if it would have been better just to go face in the meanwhile instead. Because it gets more damage through to the face. It doesn't bring it down to 1 health, so it can't die to Fan of Knives there. And you don't really care if he's shadow stepping and playing another Minstrel there. I think it's a little bit too slow of a play for Arakoj to be bothered to be afraid of it. A lot of interesting decisions in this game already. This could be a vastly different game with just 1 step differently.
Maybe Arakoj was concerned about leaving the Minstrel up because he's normally playing a faster deck than the Quest Rogue, but his hand at that time was quite slow. Since then, obviously, he has picked up the Nourish, which is very helpful. But right then, he didn't have a lot to fight very early if the Elven Minstrel were to come down and find Sonya, for instance. Brewmaster back the Zola. We've seen Pardub make really nice use of that after Valir the Hollow comes down. So it looks like he's not entirely decided on what he wants to do with the Zola. He just knows he doesn't want to give it up just yet.
Arakoj now deciding that it's worth it with the Wax Elemental now. I have the suspicion that going for the play of double Wax Elemental, maybe after the quest has been completed, into a big board, maybe after a Vanish for a bit of extra just important blocking, whereas right now it's just soaking up a couple of hits. Like, Arakoj isn't going to go for Savage Roar on this board anyway. It's not going to be blocking more than 2 or 3 damage, I think.
Nourish for the mana right into the UI on the next turn. Following that up, Whispering Woods will be at full power, and it's very likely Arakoj is going to find a Soul of the Forest and some buffs to back that up alongside the Savage Roar he already has in hand. And importantly, he could have hero powered that turn and kept the swipe, but that would have opened up Pardub to Brewmaster on Brewmaster shenanigans, not to mention Arakoj just saw Pardub Zola the Brewmaster. He knows there's another Zola in hand.
Yeah.
Or Brewmaster the Zola, excuse me. So just trying to eliminate any potential disaster scenarios by using that swipe.
Yeah, it was close. It was obviously also just to get a 3-2 off the board, because that trades quite nicely into his Scarabs at the moment. I wouldn't have hated holding it back necessarily, though, just to get through a taunt later on after he's played the Ultimate Infestation, which, again, is probably going to be coming down here.
Right about now. Do you like sending that face?
I feel like it's inconsistent, but probably still correct to be sending it face. Like, he's shown on previous turns that, you know, he wanted to trade into the Minstrel. He wanted to swipe the Brewmaster. He's been very cautious about killing off minions, and he opened himself up for the ability of Innovate into Spellstone, so it worked out beautifully here. But I think maybe even just going more aggressively for face was the way to go for this. Like, your opponent has a Zola on board. So what? If they're like bouncing back a Zola, that's such slow play, and you're afraid of quick play now as Arakoj. You're afraid of prep vanish. You're afraid of a board full of giant wax elemental taunts.
We do see Pardub has both vanishes in hand. So Arakoj now, though he is ready to use Whispering Woods and Soul of the Forest together if he wants to, that board's going to be shut down real fast. Pardub not hurting for resources yet whatsoever because he's taken the time to bounce back these novice engineers and focus on completing the quest that way. The Caverns Below actually done this very turn, and Crystal Core able to be played.
Yeah, this is an obvious benefit, I guess, for Arakoj clearing off on this turn. Even then, I feel like it was really unlikely that he sees a quest completion with novices on this turn, because it had to be exactly double Shadow Step, but it has worked out very nicely with his play because he traded off the minions that were on board, so he's not having 4/4s immediately attacking into what he's wanting to do.
A tangled web.
So for Arakoj, this looks like an opening. Pardub's only at 16 life. He has 2 minions that can attack this turn. Is there any chance that there would have been lethal here, actually?
Oh, I think it's 15 damage he's got actually here. It's
Adds Savage hero power.
yeah, he's got 2 on board. Savage adds 6, which is 8.
Yep, 15.
Whoa.
One off lethal.
I don't know. I feel like that adds credence to what I've been saying. I'm trying not to be results oriented, but just a little bit more pushing to the face. Exactly. Playing aggressively could have led to a situation where he's able to close out the game a little bit quicker. And in the end, he decides, you know what? Close enough is close enough. Let's just push face and try and close out the game with some damage next turn. But the question then is, what damage? He doesn't have swipe. He doesn't have UI in hand. He's just going to have to pray that there's no heal or taunt put in the way.
Well, this is going to be a prep minstrel into vanish for sure. And Pardub does still have 1 wax elemental. Now having picked up a glacial shard and a vicious scalehide, he can shut down the damage from face. And Arakoj then is going to be looking at finding second swipe or second UI pretty much. Can nourish for an additional 3 cards and still keep swipe as a lethal out on the next turn.
Well, having said that, with the wax elemental and the scalehide,
Oh no, yeah, Scalehide's going in. It's Pardub's going to be at 5.
It would have to be exactly UI off the top to be able to close out this game. Or could Spellstone, if you go swipe face, you can't armor and attack on the same turn.
Plus, yeah, we're assuming the shard is freezing face this turn then.
Good point.
I hope you like my invention.
Okay,
No need to vanish, just piecing apart the board with the vicious scalehide. That's not UI.
Freezing the face did effectively the same thing as the wax elemental, and I guess holding back the wax elemental to protect against minions is probably the slightly better way to go about it.
So Arakoj still has not seen a single vanish. He has to assume that there's at least 1 in hand for Pardub right now.
This is such a tough turn for Arakoj. He could go for the Nourish to try and hit Swipe or Spellstone just to kill off the Scalehide, which would then leave UI off the top as an out because he's not playing any minions for further heal. The punish for that play, though, is Valera, which we can see Pardub has in hand. And I think because Valera is a punish, maybe he doesn't find the swipe, maybe he doesn't find the Spellstone. There's too much that could have gone wrong there for Arakoj.
It just so happens that whatever he decides to play around, Pardub has what Arakoj then wouldn't be playing around.
Yeah.
And Arakoj was just 1 damage off lethal. So incredibly close to being able to close this one out. Had he pushed face with the Scarabs the turn he played UI, and only cleared off the Brewmaster, say he left the Zola on the board, that would have been an additional 4/4.
Which would have traded off one of the Scarabs.
Which would have resulted in less damage overall.
Yeah. Well, no, I think he would have had exact lethal then, because he pushes 2 more damage to face on the previous turn, still has 1 damage on that turn, which means I think he overall sneaks in 1 more damage that way, because he gets 3 hits to face with the 2 on the previous turn, 1 on the lethal turn, rather than just the 2 hits he got to face with Scarab on the lethal turn.
Would the Zola have traded into one of the Scarabs before he went for Branching Path Savage Roar?
Only one of them, yeah. Oh no, yeah. Sorry,
then
good
you
point.
lose out on the additional
Sorry.
4 damage.
No, you are correct.
But still, maybe there was a way he could have fit in one additional damage this game, and that's going to be eating away at him right now.
There was. Like, it's difficult to call it exactly, because say with the Arcane Tyrant, instead of trading into the Minstrel, he just pushed face. The game would not have looked the same by the time he gets there.
Absolutely. That would have been the point of
That's he missed 4 damage on that play. And maybe it doesn't get into the same scenario there, but I don't know. It feels to me like he could have been a little bit more aggressive in this game to try and get the damage through his face.
Perhaps a missed opportunity from Arakoj, and this was his best bet of shutting down the Quest Rogue. If this doesn't work out, he's going to have to go with Death Rattle Hunter. And we've seen Pardub is quite adept at finding Vanish when he needs it. That's really all he needs to shut down the Hunter at the right time. Hunter can get the job done, but it's not easy.
Death is eternal. My turn is not.
I'm ready to learn.
Yeah, just doing the best he can to try and salvage this board, make sure he doesn't just straight up die on the following turn, which clearly he is doing a pretty good job of, but the card is there. The boy that Pardub needs in the Vanish just to schmoop this all back to hand.
The boys are in hand. Take your pick, Pardub. Up until now, he's been doing a nice job of not having to use those Vanishes, even though it would have been pretty convenient a couple of times just to go ahead and do it. But with the prep picked up off the top, I think that we're going to see prep Vanish and then just development afterwards.
I like the sound of that. The punish just isn't really there anymore. Like, leaving your opponent without any minions on board can be kind of scary because you can't then heal with Ziliax or the Vicious Scalehide, but I mean, when you're 18 health, you just don't care about that.
No dagger ups. The deckhand can't go face this turn. Pardub is not very concerned about that. 2 games where we've seen Pardub going into fatigue as the Quest Rogue.
And who knows, maybe this is the way to be playing modern Quest Rogue, is not to be playing more value-oriented like I would usually have played, because with, like, Quest Rogue with Giggling, once you completed the quest, you just won, like, pretty much every time, because Giggling would solo you pretty much every matchup at that point. Whereas now you don't have that ultimate win condition, so maybe you just need to be spewing your resources onto the board much more aggressively, and this is an example of how to play modern Quest Rogue. I don't know. I'm certain Pardub has played more of the most recent iteration than I have.
No lethal this turn from Pardub, even with the Ziliax and Scalehide able to go through the treants from hand. He just doesn't have 2 damage.
Shadow grows.
Unity, precision.
But yeah, I mean, before Giggling Inventor. Oh my gosh, before Giggling Inventor was nerfed, you would just go Giggling Inventor and then Death Shadow every single turn. And as long as you bounce back your Giggling Inventor, you always had
the
exact play that you wanted.
Yeah. And
That's a lot different now.
In the 2 games we've seen on stream, I think Arakoj is now 0-5 against this Quest Rogue from Pardub, which, I don't know, I was pointing out that it looked like the Quest Rogue could be a potential weak spot against a couple of Arakoj's decks, but after the Zoo is banned away, maybe it's just not that bad. It seems like it's taking apart consistently the Token Druid there that was, I thought, a pretty decent matchup for the Token Druid. And now the Death Rattle Hunter, which, while I think is definitely not quite so bad as a matchup for the Death Rattle Hunter as it was before, because you can just play very aggressively in the early game, try and push face for lethal before they even complete the quest, I still would rather be on the Quest Rogue side.
The matchups that were already good against Quest Rogue, Odd Paladin, Zoo Warlock, got a lot better when Giggling Inventor was removed from the deck. But Quest Rogue is still a very, very strong deck in the matchups it was already good at. And it still apparently has some game against aggressive decks that I personally wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Token Druid should be a near hard counter for Quest Rogue, and it's just not looking like it.
Yeah.
But players like Bloodyface and Rage, for instance, have been jamming Quest Rogue on ladder again and having really, really good results with it. I think Bloodyface was top 25 for a good portion of the season.
Yeah, it's one of those things where whenever there's a big change in Hearthstone, everyone feels like they have to have a decisive opinion on it. Like, it's garbage now, or it's still tier 1, just so you have something you can tweet out as your hashtag controversial opinion. Your hot take, exactly. But in all reality, what is much more likely is it's fine. Only one card in the deck was changed. Most of it is still the same. It can't really go from a tier 1 ultimate deck to complete garbage. Yeah, exactly. Unless you're nerfing the quest itself, of course.
And even then, from a tier 1 deck to a tier 1 deck after they nerfed the quest.
Oh, yeah. That's true, actually.
Twice.
Sure. When will it die?
It's not going anywhere for a while.
I'm so ready to never see it again.
I mean, honestly, having had Quest Rogue out of the meta for a little bit, I'm not the maddest I've been to see it back.
Yeah.
You just, like, put your hands together and looked very grateful for that Devilsaur egg draw.
It just means we've got a game on our hands. Like, what was happening before? Pardub had got the novice step. He had a Brewmaster in hand. He then drew another Brewmaster. Like, he can...
Oh, it wasn't looking good.
Yeah, it was disgusting. He's got everything he needs to complete the quest already in hand. The egg pickup, though, kind of means we have a game on our hand now, because it can mean aggressive damage output comes through very quickly here for Arakoj. That is, if Pardub even leaves the egg alive, we could just see an attack into the egg on this turn for Pardub.
Not feeling like he is capable enough of dealing with the Devilsaur right now. So willing to take the chance that Arakoj has Terror Scale play dead, coin play dead at worst.
But let's think about how Arakoj would have played this if he'd had any of those cards. Obviously, he picked it up off the top, which means Pardub can't rule out Terror Scale Stalker, because if he'd played it from the left-hand side of his hand without the coin, that would mean he doesn't have Terror Scale, otherwise you would coin it out, of course.
Yes.
But the fact that he didn't go egg, coin, play dead, I think indicates that Pardub should make the read that play dead is not there in hand, or it would have come out. And so, I think he can make the read that there is maximum one Devilsaur that comes out next turn.
There may be some reasoning to holding onto the coin and just going Terror Scale play dead on 4 if Arakoj has Kathrina. But that's a big if.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. Or maybe he wants to go cube, coin, play dead with another play dead he has in hand the next turn like this. There are different reasonings. I think the most basic read, like Occam's razor, you should be coming to the conclusion that he probably doesn't have play dead. But either way, all that aside, like I was saying, Pardub could have killed it off because he had the deck hand in hand, which meant he would have been able to kill off the Devilsaur. None of that really matters all too much when he has the Vanish that he kept off of Le Mulligan, just to be completely shutting this down for Arakoj. The damage output is done.
Devilsaurs don't look all that good when they cost 5 mana. Unfortunate for Arakoj, because he was finally starting to mount an assault that looked like it could get the job done, but now all the tempo is completely gone. He's having to slow way, way down, and instead of just playing out another Devilsaur, he's going for 2 quite weak minions, actually. Spider Bomb can maybe get some value, but Keleseth, honestly, I'm kind of indifferent about at this point.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's probably more just to try and make the play awkward for Pardub. Maybe a Devilsaur would have done that as well, because 4/4s obviously don't trade well into 5/5s. I get the suspicion that maybe Arakoj is saying, the only way I'm winning this here is Kathrina off the top. Like, and if I'm going to do that, I may as well make it the best Kathrina I possibly can by playing Keleseth first and try and get 4 attack Grizzlies.
Sure. And obviously, he has the opportunity to cube if the Spider Bomb lives. And knowing that Pardub wanted to play Crystal Core that turn, he'd completed it already. That was 5 mana that he was going to have to use.
Yeah.
So less likely that he would want to kill off the Spider Bomb on that turn.
There once was a man from Gilneas.
But Pardub just has all of the resources he could possibly need. Valera the Hollow for whenever he wants to play it, but Sonya Shadow Dancer as well. If Arakoj does get a bigger board out, Sonya plus Vicious Scalehide is just going to make quick work of that.
Yeah, That was an uncharacteristically slow play there for Pardub, though, I would say, where he had the ability to go Sonya plus, charges to take out the cube, charges to charge into the spider bomb as well, just to maybe try and blow that up on one of your minions while you have Sonya on the board so that you actually get some value out of it and just get those death rattles out of the way. Because Pardub can't just take it super slow for the rest of the game, because Arakoj, from where Pardub is sat, could just slam Katharina. He could have slammed Katharina on this turn and pushed huge amounts of damage to face with a King Crush off the top. Like, Pardub needs to lock out this game, and I'm not certain that going for the Mimic Pod on that turn when he already had 8 cards in hand was the way to maximize his advantage here.
All right, so Arakoj electing to use the Terror Scale onto the cube. Spider Bombs are just going to be more valuable here than a Devil Sword. But Pardub finds that second vanish off the top, and you're not looking too happy about that, Derek.
Nothing really matters. Anyone can see. Yeah. Pardub just gets the second vanish. This is, I think, what happened against the Death Rattle Hunter last time. Like, it looked like he was maybe starting to lose board, and then he just rips the second vanish like an absolute madman.
That's unfortunate in so many ways.
Yeah, I feel like if he hadn't got the second vanish, maybe his line of play of just going basically very low tempo play into Valera, which is basically 2 very low tempo plays in 2 turns in a row, could have been punished to just losing board. And I say that because Death Rattle Hunter does have a very powerful combo against Questroke, where it can play Grizzly and cube and play dead that Grizzly, because a 3-attack minion is a nightmare for Questroke to catch up against, because it can't sacrifice off its own charge minions with Sonya to just destroy the whole board. So I do like trying to stay ahead against Death Rattle Hunter as a Questroke, but obviously when you draw the second vanish, you don't need to worry about all of that.
Well, any way you look at it, I do think we have underestimated Questroke in this field.
I will give you that.
And I will say, without the Token Druid getting a win, Arakoj's lineup is not particularly good against Questroke in any way.
And, it's easy to call Questroke, whatever you want to give it the moniker, like a high roll deck in this iteration where it has to draw, Prep and Vanish or Sonya or whatever combination of cards to fight back in the early game
it's
to survive
anymore. It's a deck that rewards experience and good play more than most others.
Yes, I will definitely agree with that. And when it looks like it's disgustingly high rolling 6 games in a row for Pardub, maybe that's just what the deck does.
But if it does it 6 times in a row, there's got to be some legitimacy there.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't just get disgustingly lucky 6 times in a row.
Yeah.
And if you do, go play the lottery. You're going to make more money there.
Yeah. Ziliak's buffed up to 4 attack is, something in combination with these speed air bombs.
But there's 2 Sonyas on the board.
Yeah.
Like, you're not beating double Sonya.
You could magnetize 2 or even 3 spider bombs together and then go for the terror scale to try and go boom, boom, boom.
Bomb. I mean, honestly, that would be sweet.
I mean, come on, give us a little show. If you're going to lose anyway, let's go out with a bang. Yeah, I mean, he pretty much knows this is over.
More of a whimper than a bang at this point.
Oh, that was the Fizzlebang's less popular brother, Whimperbang.
Wilfred Whimperbang. He makes the deck recipes in Wild, eh?
And that's going to be it. We unfortunately have to say goodbye to Arakoj, but Pardub, man oh man, is his Questroke looking good in this tournament. And maybe I do just have to give it more credit. Ball Control also had the Questroke in his lineup, and on Twitter, a lot of the pros were saying he just nailed the preparation. His was pretty much the best lineup. And unfortunately, his Questroke did not end up seeing him through to a victory in the top 16. But for Pardub, it is quite the different story. Going on to face Boston now in the semi-finals. That Questroke, I would be very unsurprised to see it just banned away in that series because of how well it's placed against Boston's lineup.
I mean, 6-0 with the Questroke against Arakoj is an incredible record. And I would agree, Boston's lineup definitely looks closer to Arakoj's than it does to Pardub's.
Yeah.
And that Questroke is very, very scary when you don't have some very aggressive decks that you can counter it with. And even then, the Token Druid from Arakoj, it didn't even look close. Well, okay, I take it back. It was quite close. Arakoj was 1 damage off
Yeah.
lethal at one point in time, but once Pardub was able to stabilize from there, it was a shutout at that point. So, unfortunate for Arakoj. He's not moving on in the tournament, but Pardub will be going up against Boston in our semifinals. We're going to be seeing that a little bit later on. But now we have our third quarterfinal of the day. It's going to be Dawido taking on Fayeli. And when we come back, we're going to decide who will be in the other side of the semifinals. So don't go anywhere. More of the DreamHack Winter Hearthstone Grand Prix coming up right after this.